Hi guys, Ronnie here from The Volchemist, and in this video I would like to talk to you a little bit about plies. This could be a little bit confusing, especially for beginner knitters and crocheters, because you can see all these numbers and all these expressions on your label or in the listings when you're shopping for yarn, and the normal thing you would assume is that the more plies a yarn has, the thicker it is. And back in the day, this was very true because they used to create a standard width or diameter of strand for the yarn. And the more of these they spun together, the thicker the yarn. A 1 ply would have been really thin, and a 4 ply would have been medium, and a 8 or 10 ply would have been thick and chunky. Yeah, so those were the happy days. However, sadly, that is entirely untrue nowadays because with the more modern technologies, they can create strands of all sorts of diameters. A strand of yarn can be a really cobweb-like thinness, or it can be a chunky thickness, and the yarn will still be called a singles or a 1 ply. But it will only have 70 meters or 100 meters to 100 grams, making it really chunky. So when you look at your label and you see ply on it, 1 ply, 4 ply, don't just immediately assume that that will mean the thickness of the yarn or the weight of the yarn, because most of the time, sadly, it doesn't. Why to put plies on the yarn labels then, if it doesn't really describe the thickness or the weight of the yarn? Because how many plies the yarn has will determine what project that yarn will be best suited for. I myself am really only working with a few different plies, not all of them that is available. But I would like to talk a little bit about the most commonly found one. First of all, when you see 1 ply or singles on a label, that will mean that your yarn is created by just one strand. It's not twisted together. It's just one incredibly soft thread of, in this case, wool, which is just going in one direction. It's very, very soft, but due to it being just a single strand, it is also not very sturdy. You have to be a little bit more careful with it when you work with it, and also when you wind it, and especially when once you made it into a garment and you're washing it, because it's much more prone to bubbling and felting. So a 1 ply or a singles doesn't necessarily mean that your yarn is a lace weight, incredibly thin. This, for example, and this, by the way, is the skein that is up for grabs in my UK giveaway, which is running for another month on Insta. You can check it out in my highlights. This beautiful Silfrena colorway is a fingering weight singles. So it's got 400 meters to 100 grams. It's not lace, it's fingering, but it is 1 ply singles. So probably one of the softest feelings that you ever had. And I would suggest you use it for just a simpler pattern, because a 1 ply or a singles yarn is a little bit flatter, and because the yarn strands themselves aren't so defined, because they don't have these plies threaded around each other, it doesn't hold its shape as well. It kind of lays a little bit into each other, and it doesn't give you as crisp a stitch definition as a multiple ply yarn. That's not to say that what you knit with it won't be incredibly beautiful, but when you want to make color work, stranded color work like Fair Isle, you will find that your different colors won't be as distinguished from each other as if you would have used multiple ply yarn. So one ply or singles means that it's just one strand. It's a little bit more sensitive. It is incredibly soft. That's worth remembering. The other thing that I'm working with is a 4-ply. A 4-ply is a very confusing expression because in the yarn universe, it is used to express two different things. One is that the yarn is spun using 4 different strands, and the other is that it's a certain thickness. It's a synonym for fingering or sock weight, which is around 400 meter per 100 grams. This is really confusing, and I myself am using in the descriptions 4-ply as the synonym of fingering and not necessarily as a description of how many plies it's made up of. But I also put fingering next to it, so it's always obvious what I mean by it. A multiple ply yarn is made up by twisting these single strands around each other. They are twisting it in opposite directions and then they wind around each other, and this gives the yarn much more durability. That's actually the same thing as what they use when they're creating ropes for ships or those cable ropes for suspension bridges. The more strands you twist together, the stronger the rope or the cable will be, and this is exactly the same with yarn. It's gonna be more durable and stronger from being multiple ply. The stitch definition of a 2, 3, 4 ply is also crisper than that of singles yarn. That's all good and well, and now you can at least pay attention to this little word in your descriptions, and you don't automatically jump to conclusions of the thickness. Have a wee look, first of all, of the numbers of the weight. How many meters or yards to a certain amount of grams. I like to work with 100 grams. Even when it's a smaller ball or a 50 or a 20, I just kind of count it back up in my head to 100. And these little categories is in my head. So for example, I know that a fingering will be around 400. So from a 375 to a 425, that's a fingering weight yarn. And I know exactly what needle I'm going to pick up to use with it for my own tension. I also know that anything above 550 will be a light fingering going towards lace. Anything that's got more than 600 meters to 100 grams will be a lace weight. 700 is a thinner lace, 800 is a pretty standard lace, and then you get the extreme cobwebby laces which have like 1,000 meters to 100 grams or even 1,200, which is mostly for weavers. I don't think knitters or crocheters will be working too much with that thinness rather than thickness. And then you've got 280 meters per 100 gram, which will be a sport weight. And anything around 200 meters per 100 gram will be your double knit. 160-ish will be your Aran. I think the United States actually calls this worsted. So this is where the confusion comes in even further, that the United States is using different expressions to the UK, and obviously globalized trading means that you're gonna buy brands from all over the world, and you look at the label and you go, oh my word. So I suggest when you're looking for a pattern, don't just look at worsted, Aran, DK, whatever the designer put there. Have a look at the meterage or yardage and check that with your yarn. And one last really, really good tip for you guys today, which I have learned recently, and it's honestly such a wee lifesaver. If you have some mystery yarn, like I have here, you either buy it in a dye it at home kit. I got this from my sister, and it had no description on the weight of the yarn at all. Or maybe you inherit a bunch of wool from somebody, or they gift it to you and it just comes in pre-wound little balls with no labels whatsoever. And you sit there with the yarn and you go, what on earth am I going to do with this? You don't want to start a pattern only to realize that the weight of the yarn is completely wrong for that particular pattern. What can you do? Well, there is one thing you can do, which is not a very practical approach, is you can weigh the ball, see how many grams, and then you start with your measuring tape to see how many meters Now this is going to take you absolutely forever, so I'm going to show you guys a little bit of an easier way to try to find out what weight, thickness your mystery yarn is. Get yourself a V-ruler. Now this one is centimeters because I'm a metric girl. Sorry, I'm from the continent. I will never get used to inches, but I kind of know the numbers to count between inches and centimeters. What we're going to do is we're going to find out how many wraps per inch this yarn has. An inch is about 2.5 centimeters, you guys. So I'm going to take this yarn, take my little measuring tape, and I start at a random point, say at 3 centimeters, and I'm going to keep wrapping this yarn around my ruler gently and not too tightly so I don't stretch the yarn. I'm just going to make it lie flat nicely. Side by side, the little strands. I'm not stretching it at all. Just let it relax and snugly wrap it next to each other. And I keep going from the 3 until the 5.5, which is around about an inch. And when I'm done, I'm going to count how many times I managed to wrap that yarn around my ruler. And I have a little list which I will post for you in under the video as a reference. To know what your wrap count means. So here I went from 3 to 5.5, and I'm going to count how many reps I have done. So here you go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I say 15. So that will mean that this is around a sport weight. It's just the higher end of double knit. So it's definitely not fingering weight. It's a little bit thicker than that. And as a little tester for you, so that you can see that this method actually really works, I have brought another yarn where I know exactly the weight of it. So we're just going to try if this method really works. So I'm going to do the same with this yarn. I'm going to start at the 3 centimeter mark, and I'm going to keep wrapping this beautiful magenta yarn around several times from the 3 centimeter mark all the way to the 5.5. And you can already tell that I'm wrapping it more times than I have before. Now, if you're clever, you can actually count as you wrap, and then it saves you from counting later. There we go, round about here. You can do another few and then just make sure that you're counting only to your inch mark. Okay, so this is it now. Probably another couple before I reach the 5.5. Okay, let's see if I'm there. Don't want to make it too tight. And this is about 22, which is the top end of fingering. And this yarn is in fact 600 meters to 120 grams, so that will make it a light fingering. So this method works, guys. If you have mystery yarn, get a ruler, wrap it around the ruler, count how many wraps per inch you manage, and I will pop in the comment for you a little list for you to determine how many wraps will mean which weight, and this way you can always know your mystery yarn, what project to use it for. Right, oh, this video is quite a bit longer than I intended it to be. I'm really sorry. Hopefully, however, you have learned a thing or two, and I managed to clear up a little bit of confusion around the plies, especially when I put this yarn up for the giveaway. I had a few comments about it being one ply singles. People were a little bit worried about how to use it because they're not really comfortable with using too thin yarn. And I had to then explain to them that the name one ply or singles doesn't mean that it's a lace yarn. It's still fingering. You can still use it for to make a cholette or hats and mittens or whatever you want. And that's when I thought, you know something, I'm gonna have to make a video for you guys to clear up this confusion, because this is something I didn't know for a very long time, and I was completely terrified of ever buying singles because I thought it's just gonna be too thin. And then when I did buy my first skein of one ply singles yarn, I was blown away by the incredible softness of it. So don't be afraid of one ply, guys. One ply doesn't mean it's too thin. One ply just means that it's a different structure. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop talking now because I'm wasting too much of your time. Any questions, pop under the video in the comments, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be coming back with another video very, very soon.